So welcome back to the answers for our 1974 music quiz. Marks out of 50. Let's see you go. At the moment we're seeing at like 34 is about as high as we've had. Let's see if you can beat that this week. Okay, our first question. The biggest selling single of the year in the UK was by David Essex. How about that? David Essex. Yeah, he was. Interesting about David Essex. There's the song "Gonna Make You a Star," #1, biggest selling of the year here. In America, David Essex is seen as a one-hit wonder because the song "Rock On" went, I think, top 5, certainly top 10 over there, and he's never charted again since, and never did before. So yeah, very different view of him out there. David Essex, of course, comes from Essex, hence how he got his name. He's also famously a West Ham fan, like myself. Back in the 90s, when I used to have a season ticket at West Ham, David Essex used to sit just in front of me, a couple of rows forward and about 6 or 7 to the side. I think because he was involved in kind of hosting various people who had come along and they wanted to smooth a little bit, in what was called the 66 Club. Yeah, we like to make a lot of 1966. But my favourite thing with him was once, one game there, he came out, because obviously during half time he'd take these people in to this club and smooth them, whatever. But he came out early and he was out on his own there. And then the announcer came over the speakers saying that, David Essex, big West Ham fan, of course, here every week. He's asked me to play his new single for him to give it a bit of a go. And he was stood there. And that's obviously why he come out. But with us all around him, the fans all sat around him, he obviously got a bit embarrassed and he turned around to us and he was going, I didn't ask him. I didn't. He clearly did. But I'll always remember that. Wasn't much of a song either. Anyway. So there you go. If you fancy David Essex's album, there it is. Self-titled. Fantastic, eh? Who toured for the first time since '66? I'm sure many of you knew this. This was Dylan. I suppose this must be one of the most famous tours of all time. Bearing in mind the kind of circumstances of it all and the motorbike crash and all the changes and everything since, and the fact the band was so huge by now. And he was touring with the band as well. But it was also at the same time as Watergate, I gather, and the song "It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding" got a rapturous reception apparently every single time he played it, mostly because there's a line in it, isn't there, about even the president of America has to stand there naked at times. Anyway, the band, the tour had a live album. So that's certainly one that you can look at as one of his most famous there. Worth going for. Number 3, who won the Eurovision Song Contest? Of course, it was ABBA. That was the year of Waterloo. Waterloo, whose original title was Honey Pie. I'm not sure whether it would have been quite successful then. And it wasn't even actually their first attempt at Eurovision. I think they realised it was the way forward, and they tried to enter the previous year and hadn't even been selected as Sweden's entry. And that was with the song Ring Ring, which is obviously very well known of theirs now. And it's also, Waterloo wasn't their choice apparently as well for this song contest originally. They were going to enter with Hasta Mañana, which you may know from the album of the same name. There we go. And in that 74 one, which was held last minute in Brighton, because Luxembourg said we haven't got the money to stage it. All kinds of things went wrong apparently, and there were all kinds of problems. Loads of people pulled out. The French pulled out because their president died. The Italians pulled out because they were worried about the song, the political ideas behind the song. All kinds of stuff went on. We had Olivia Newton-John singing at the UK entry, and the Wombles performed at the interval. Well, that must have been a night, mustn't it? It was John Lennon who joined Elton John, apparently sick as a dog behind stage. He was so nervous. He only came on for 3 songs, but it was certainly the first time he performed. And this was famously, of course, after these performances, when he was reunited with Yoko. I think Elton John staged it, actually, set it up, invited Yoko along, and they were reunited after the Lost Weekend. Okay. The greatest hits album that was the biggest seller of the year was The Carpenters. Yeah, I'd have thought it would have been Simon and Garfunkel. That hits collection was huge, wasn't it? But no, it was The Carpenters with Singles, it was called. Okay, 69 to 73. And as for naming that album, well, let's see how we get on with this. First of all, what have we got? We've got Diamond Dogs. Yeah, Diamond Ring and a pack of husky dogs there, the Bowie album. Not one of my favourite Bowie albums, to be honest with you. But apparently known because in the original cover, Bowie, of course, is half man, half dog on the cover. Apparently, it was very clear what gender of dog he was, and RCA airbrushed that out, probably for the good of everybody involved. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Alan Lamb there, you see at the beginning, the great Alan Lamb. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Genesis' last album with Gabriel, the last contribution that Peter Gabriel made on stage. It was the tour after this in which he left. Apparently this caused an awful lot of problems. It's a concept album, of course, famously. And he wrote the story for it, but then he insisted on writing all the lyrics for it as well. And apparently there were all kinds of problems with that because that's not the way they approach things. And bye-bye, Peter. And then finally, Planet Waves, the Planet Jupiter Waves. Yeah, the Dylan studio album from that year. Okay. And the last two. Number 9. Did you know it was Mr. Good there? Mr. Good from the Mr. Men. Abraham Simpson is old, and those boys may be wearing skirts, but they are boys because this is Good Old Boys. The Randy Newman album, and what a terrific album it is as well. A kind of concept album about the American South, with Randy Newman doing his usual quite really acerbic lyrics. Listen to the song Rednecks, and you see he doesn't pull his punches at all. You know, as he often does, he takes on a character in most of his songs. Doesn't tend to sing from his perspective, takes on a character. And originally, I think the whole album was going to be from the perspective of this Johnny Cutler, I think was the name of the person, but only a few songs are in the end. Cracking album, well worth checking out. And then there's Court and Spark, the Joni Mitchell one. Joni Mitchell's biggest selling album, which might be a surprise to some people. Biggest commercial success. Okay, on to the lyrics. Right, what have we got first of all? We have A Built-In Remedy for Khrushchev and Kennedy. Of course, this is Killer Queen from the album Sheer Heart Attack. A song that apparently is about a high-class call girl. There we are. Number 12, The Bizarre Zoo Time Is Me and You Time. The Mammals Are Your Favourite Type. And You Want Her Tonight. Yeah. This is This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us. Sparks from Kimono My House. Very interesting album indeed. Then we have, one thing about that Kimono My House thing. Look at the lady on the right. That lady on the right is called Michi Giraton, and she also did the vocals for the song It's No Game on Bowie's Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. In 1980. There you go. I like that fact, but I'm a David Bowie fan. Number 13, of course, is The Streets of London. Have you seen the old man in the closed down market, kicking up the papers with his worn out shoes? In his eyes, you see no pride, hand held loosely by his side. Yesterday's paper telling yesterday's news. Ralph McTell's album, Easy. That's where it comes from. Famously, originally was called The Streets of Paris. Because that was where he was when he got the inspiration to sing it, seeing the homeless in Paris. Number 14, what was tough? Loneliness was tough. The toughest role you ever played. Of course, this is Candle in the Wind, the original one. the song about Marilyn Monroe. Although Bernie Taupin apparently says that it could have been any artist who died young. He wasn't a big Marilyn Monroe fan. It wasn't particularly about her. It was just about an artist who dies young and becomes iconic. It always makes me think of a line in Macbeth. Well, it would do, you know, English teacher as I am, where Macbeth says, "Out, brief candle." And whenever I'm teaching that and go to that, I always think of Candle in the Wind, but then none of the kids have ever heard of Candle in the Wind anymore, so it doesn't really help. He's a man with a plan, got a counterfeit dollar in his hand. He's Mr. Know-It-All. He's Mr. Know-It-All. That's obviously Stevie Wonder. His album this year is fulfilling his first finale, one of the last in his what's often thought of as one of the greatest runs of albums of all time. Obviously, Mr. Know-It-All actually came from Innervisions, the one before. It was the last song on there. But fulfilling this his first finale is his 74 album, and certainly well worth a listen. Mr. Know-It-All, most people seem to think it's about Nixon. Stevie Wonder has never revealed one way or the other. I heard a very interesting theory. It was about Berry Gordy, you know, the Motown, the head of Motown, who, by all accounts, was not always a nice man to deal with. Okay, so we move on to the connections here. What was the connection between George Harrison, Pink Floyd, Elton John, and Hot Tuna? It's animals. This year they all released albums which were titled to do with animals. We had Dark Horse from George Harrison. We had Animals from Pink Floyd. We had Caribou from Elton John. And we had the Phosphorescent Rat from Hot Tuna. So well done if you got that. The connection to number 17 is a little bit more realistic. What's the connection between Free, Mott the Hoople and King Crimson? It's the group Bad Company, the supergroup Bad Company. We had the members are drawn all from those three groups, with Paul Rodgers, the lead singer, of course, coming from Free, taking, I think he's his bassist with him. I think the guitarist came from Mott the Hoople and the drummer from King Crimson. So they are Bad Company, an album that, well, it's worth a listen as well. What about these four? What's the connection between them? Well, the connection is the word baby. These are all songs about baby. We had Paul Anka with You're Having My Baby. Yeah, there's something about that doesn't seem right, isn't it? Anyway, we've got the Rubettes with the famous Sugar Baby Love, which got to be huge hits after their appearance on Top of the Pops, singing it. But when they appeared on Top of the Pops, they were only number 51 in the charts at the time. The only reason they got to appear was because they couldn't put Sparks on for This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us at the last minute, because Sparks didn't have the correct kind of music permits. They weren't part of Equity, and so they couldn't come and perform on stage. So the Rubettes got in there, and the rest is a kind of history. George McRae, of course, did Rock Your Baby, one of the biggest songs of the year. And the Stylistics had a massive hit with Rock and Roll Baby. It was, again, one of the 30 biggest hits, I think, of the year as well. Okay, the picture round. So what have we got here? We've got Suzi Quatro, number 19 there. Had her second number one this year with Devilgate Drive. We've got Graham Parsons, who released Griever's Angel, one of his best albums this year. We've got Randy Newman, looking very diligent there. We've just talked about a much younger Barry White there. He had a bit of a year, Barry White. His only ever US and UK number ones came in 1974, and different songs. In the US, it was Can't Get Enough of Your Love. In the UK, you probably know it was My First, My Last, My Everything. And he got married for the second time as well that year. So bit of a year for Barry. 23 was Marie Osmond. the last of the Osmonds to get involved in music, apparently, apart from the brother Tom, who's completely deaf. And Marie was only 15 in this year when she had a hit singing with her brother. 24 is Paper Lace. Paper Lace. Again, a very interesting band. Very 1974. They had 3 top 40 singles, all in 1974. Probably most famous is Billy Don't Be a Hero. Having risen to fame from winning on Opportunity Knocks in 1973. A talent show group. Can you believe it? A talent show group that go through to have big success, but only for a brief time. Never hear that again, would you? And 25, of course, is the intriguingly strange Ron Mayle from Sparks, who famously sat at his keyboard in most of their performances while his brother Russell was leaping around all over the place, almost motionless, looking menacingly at the crowd with his Hitler moustache. Okay, the second half, onto that. Album covers. This, of course, the Pretzel Van is because it's Steely Dan's Pretzel Logic. I'm not sure what Pretzel Logic is. I'm sure many of you do. Number 27 is the lovely Jackson Browne album, Late from the Sky. Number 28 is, of course, Kraftwerk's Autobahn. 29 is Robert Wyatt's Rock Bottom. You know, much loved album. Of course, Robert Wyatt, this was his first album after his tragic accident in which, having got drunk, he fell out of a 3rd floor window and ended up paralysed in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And he wrote this album. The title said it all. He wrote this album while recovering in hospital. In a very low place in his life. Although pretty soon after this, then he also met his wife and married her. So things did get a lot better, even if obviously he wasn't quite as he was before. And number 30 is the Funkadelic album, Standing on the Verge of Getting It On. Okay, name that tune round. The name that tune round. Did you get them? The first one was She by Charles Aznavour. I'm sure most of you got She. Would you remember it was Charles Aznavour? Love Me for a Reason by the Osmonds. I'm not sure which is worse, their version or a Boy's Own version from the 90s. But anyway, 33 was Remember You're a Womble by the Wombles. I had that album when I was a little boy. I had Remember You're a Womble. It's a wonderful collection of strange songs. Mike Batt making his way to his first million. 34 was Annie's Song by John Denver, an ode to his wife, called Annie, of course. Apparently written on a ski lift in Aspen in Colorado. Well, there we are. And number 35, Dolly Parton's I Will Always Love You. I couldn't give you much of that. It's so well known. A song she wrote for her partner and mentor, at the time, Porter Wagoner, who she was splitting up with. So, and the saddest breakup songs there is. Give me that version anytime over Whitney's myself, but there you are. Not everyone agrees. The covers. Okay. Lulu and David Bowie, of course, were connected by The Man Who Sold the World, which Lulu had a huge hit with in 74, again, on the top selling list of the year. Clapton and Marley, I think most of you would have remembered that Clapton did I Shot the Sheriff. Eric Clapton had a funny year here. He got himself clean off heroin at the time and recorded an album that, Ocean Boulevard, that many felt was the one of the greatest he produced. Sang this Bob Marley song, and then not long afterwards, of course, ranted on about Enoch Powell being right. But never mind. 38. Have you heard the Mick Ronson version of Love Me Tender? It's the first song on his lovely 1974 album, Slaughter on 10th Avenue, in which, after being ceremoniously dumped by Bowie, he goes out on his own and sounds like Bowie. But then again, he would do. I mean, you know, he wrote an awful lot of. He was an awful big part of Ziggy Stardust and writing the parts for that anyway. Joe Cocker and Billy Preston actually both in 1974 released You Are So Beautiful, but Joe Cocker's, of course, was the cover and the better known of it. And Ken Booth was covered many years later by Boy George singing Everything I Own. Boy George got to #1, his first solo #1 with that as well. Okay. The one-hit wonders and novelty songs starts with Seasons in the Sun, which of course was Terry Jacks. I hate that song. I really hate that song. Oh, sentimental claptrap. Oh, it's horrible. But the weird thing about it is, many of you might know this, it sold 10 million, but it's an originally a French song from 1961, a Jacques Brel song called Le Moribond. And it's well worth looking that up, that song, on Spotify, because it's so much better than Terry Jacks' version. It's got some lovely dissonant, you know, backing to it. It's much faster and much more, you know, kind of Jacques Brel speaky sing type. So I recommend that for you. Hang On In There Baby was Johnny Bristol, the sadly late Johnny Bristol. Number 43, Kung Fu Fighting, was Carl Douglas. Remember Carl Douglas? Yeah, a real one-hit wonder. And number 44, Viva España, was from Sylvie. She was a one-hit wonder. She had one other very big hit and a couple of very, very minor ones as well. But everyone remembers her for Viva España, that novelty song of the time. And the streak, of course, was Ray Stevens, a very, very bizarre song indeed, with all kinds of spoken word and radio broadcast put in alongside some very strange lyrics and comical percussion noises. Anyway, moving on to the trivia here. The musical film starring all of these people was Stardust, the sequel to That'll Be the Day from the previous year, which introduced the same characters and same people along, and had Ringo Starr in. The original did. He was replaced by Adam Faith here. He says it's because Stardust was very much about kind of like coming to prominence in the 60s and, you know, becoming huge. And he said, I lived it. Why would I want to act it? But many others believe that actually he was much more uncomfortable at a scene in it that kind of mirrored Pete Best being sacked from the Beatles and him replacing him. Believe who you want to believe. Okay, number 47, the group who launched Swan Song was Led Zeppelin. And 48, the future of rock and roll, or rock and roll future, was Bruce Springsteen. There you go, I corrected it, 74 there. Was Bruce Springsteen, who of course had a really kind of prominence in the following year. So John Landau had a point really, didn't he? 49, the odd one out here. Okay, well, what do we have? We have Bon Scott, who in 1974 joined AC/DC as their lead singer, just ahead of them recording their first album at the end of that year. We have Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, who joined Fleetwood Mac this year. Of course, the following year released Fleetwood Mac their first or the second Fleetwood Mac album, self-titled, which was their first big hit in the States, particularly of any kind. And then the year after, Rumours, or 2 years after Rumours. We have Michael Anthony, who joined Van Halen this year. Van Halen only just been formed, and Michael Anthony jumped on just at the right time. And the odd one out is Mick Taylor, because Mick Taylor left the Stones this year. So the other three joined the band that are going to bring him to fame. Mick Taylor left. So he wasn't sacked, he left. The odd one out, number 50, John, Paul, George and Ringo. Well, this is a good one, this here, really, because 3 of the 4 here had #1 singles in the US this year, solo #1 singles in the US this year, and one didn't. And that one was George Harrison. George Harrison released Dark Horse, but of course Dark Horse was a real flop. It really didn't do very well, and his Dark Horse tour, was a bit of a disaster for a number of reasons. One, his voice was really struggling at this point. It was shot. If you ever see documentary footage of him at this point, it really is struggling. And he doesn't seem that well. He's incredibly thin, and doesn't look healthy in the slightest. But also, it wasn't helped by the fact that he used as a support act a group of traditional Indian musicians, including Ravi Shankar, which didn't go down well with some of his fans who were there. Not that I think he cared. But John Lennon got to #1 at the end of the year with Whatever Gets You Through the Nights, which, of course, Elton John joined him for. At the beginning of the year, Ringo got to #1 with his cover version of You're 16. And in the middle of the year, Paul McCartney with Wings got to #1 with the single Band on the Run. So the first year in which all of the Beatles, bar one, had a solo single. Bit of nostalgia going on there. How did you do? How did you do at your 50? Like I said, you can give yourself half marks if you got the artist and not the album in any of these cases, or you got the odd one out and you didn't get why. See how many you got out. Do let me know. There's going to be, of course, another quiz next Sunday, another year, another quiz. Please don't forget to donate to my Just Giving page for Young Minds UK. And follow me on Twitter, and feel free to give me any feedback. Thank you very much for coming once again. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please subscribe, click on like, and tell your friends. The more come along, the bigger a deal this is, the more likely I'm to get some money going, and also hopefully give people a good, enjoyable time. I'll see you next Sunday. Bye.